Welcome to the Fleet News Group podcast, where we explore the people, policies, and practices that make vehicles safer workplaces. I'm your host, Mark Sibbald, and today's episode is something special. We're joined by one of New Zealand's most celebrated motorsport drivers, Hayden Paddon. From winning rally stages on the world stage to launching the world's first electric rally car, Hayden's career is a masterclass in goal setting, strategy, and measured risk. But beyond the trophies and the tarmac, Hayden is also passionate about road safety, youth driver education, and creating a culture where performance and safety go hand in hand. In this episode, we'll explore what fleet managers can learn from elite motorsport and how to influence safer driving behaviours across an organisation. Hayden, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
It was we met the other in July, I think it was, at the E-Road Fleet Day, and you were speaking in front of 1,600 fleet managers. It was a big audience. Is that the biggest audience you've spoken to, or have you done bigger at other events?
Oh no, it was a big audience. It's probably more daunting than driving a rally car at 200 kilometers an hour on gravel. So, but no, it was a great turnout. It was a great day, and but yeah, I was quite pleased to get it done with as well. So.
Yeah, I myself was on the stage after you, but not as many people hung around to hear me speak as they were there for you, so it was a little bit smaller for me.
I'm sure it was equally as challenging though.
Yeah. So let's just kick off with the motorsport career. For those of our audience that aren't familiar with the work you've done in rallying, you've had an incredible career from grassroots racing in New Zealand to standing on the top step of a WRC podium. What are some of the most defining moments or the best memories you have from that, and sort of how does it link to preparation, performance, and managing risk behind the wheel?
Yeah, it's been a long 30 plus years since I first started in go-karts as a 6-year-old, and yeah, always had a dream to take it to the world around and follow some of my idols. So I was very fortunate through many years of hard graft and a lot of good people around us helping us, supporting us, that we had some amazing opportunities to compete in the World Rally Championship, and obviously hard to go past winning our WRC rally in Argentina. But probably even of recent, winning our 2 European titles has been something I've been quite proud of. Simply because we've also done that off the back of a private team here in New Zealand, private funding, and going up against the Europeans on their home turf. So, that's been going well. But of course, I'm always looking forward to the next challenges. And while, we've been able to achieve some amazing things over the last 20 years, for me, it's about what can we achieve next. And, still haven't given up on this dream of being a World Rally Champion, but I guess the focus is now on actually doing it as a team with our team here in New Zealand rather than just me as a driver. So we're working on the building blocks on putting that together and having our own team competing on a global stage. And but yeah, obviously the journey through motorsports taught me a lot of things, not just about sport, but a lot of things that I think are quite they cross over the personal, business, all facets of life. Whether that's right from the simple things of goal setting to, how you apply yourself, sacrifices, motivation that you got to do along the way. And, sport is always an interesting one because it puts it in a public arena where the results of your work are very public for everyone to see. So there is no hiding. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but of course I'm thankful for what the journey's taught me already.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like to have my performance review in public or on TV like like it is with your performance in motorsport.
Yeah, it's like, to be honest, it's pressure though, isn't it? So there's nothing like a bit of pressure to put yourself under in sport or business, and how you perform under pressure.
Yeah, and I suppose with goal setting, the key is to tell people about it or write it down if you're ever planning to achieve it. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to your road safety advocacy. To people who aren't familiar with motorsport, safety or road safety might seem like a strange combination with motorsport, but it's something that you're obviously conscious of all the time, managing risk. So, how did you, I suppose, move from motorsport into sort of road safety and the advocacy work you're doing to I suppose make people more aware of the risks on the road just daily driving?
Yeah, well, I think when you're involved in a sport like ours, you become a lot more, I guess, conscious of the risks that are involved. And we're very lucky in motorsport; we have a lot of safety enhancements on both the car and the equipment that we wear, and it's all in a controlled environment. But just being involved in general in the automotive industry and working on cars, you get to see how fragile they are. Too often, you see people who hop in a car and think that they're bulletproof, thinking that they're surrounded in this steel cockpit, but in reality, you're actually at danger. While all efforts are made with the safety systems that are in cars nowadays, they're not bulletproof. But more so around the driving side, and it's become particularly frustrating for me when I come back home is seeing the level of drivers, and that's not a bad thing. It's just it gives me an appreciation for where the level of driving standards are, and that goes right back to the education, the training, the licensing process, that maybe people aren't getting the necessarily information before they hop in the car. And we live in a society nowadays where it's almost like a God-given right that you should just get a driver's license. It's part of life, but we need to treat it with a lot more respect than that, because at the end of the day, when we're on the road, we're putting not only our own lives but other people's lives at risk. It only takes a split-second decision, incorrect decision, or movement in the car, or anything. It can happen in a split second, and you can go from being in control to out of control. And our sport has definitely magnified that, and that's what's, I guess, given me an appreciation of that we have a platform to actually help try and educate. Too often motorsport is used as a platform to develop technology within cars, and that is obviously still a big part. But I think we also have a platform to actually teach education of drivers, and using our sport also as a platform to help with that education process, and I guess bring a little bit of a cool factor to it, if you like, particularly to the younger audience, to get involved in the sport perhaps and upskill. An example of that is I started driving race cars, which you can do here in New Zealand when you're 12 years old. You can have a motorsport license when you're 12, and you're doing controlled events in a paddock, which teach you so much driving skill, and it's actually irrelevant to whether you want to build a career in motorsport. You actually just learn a lot, and then by the time you get your driver's license when you're 16, you've got good skills behind you. You've done a bit of a sport that's got a bit of a fun factor to it. And I think if you went into schools and told most 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds to go, hey, look, you can come drive a car in a motorsport event, I think you'd find the majority would jump at the opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to introduce them to driving, and I suppose it then becomes hours behind the wheel, as you said. You develop the skills through the hours and the time behind the wheel.
Yeah, definitely. It's like anything. What do they say? 10,000 hours of practice, and you can be good at anything.
Yeah.
So it's our sport is big about seat time. The more time you spend driving, the faster and the better you are, and that's no different to people. People who are driving, in the fleets or line haul transport, and that they're probably quite competent drivers because they spend a lot of time behind the wheels, versus people who are just out to the shops once or twice every week, who maybe don't have the skill set the same as others.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, driving standards, and the fact that getting a license is considered a right, and maybe not as rigorous or extensive with the learning process. For an organisation, when someone joins an organisation, they're given a set of cars. Many people just, have you got a license? Yes, okay, you must be able to drive. But when it's a workplace, it's quite different. So how should organisations treat company car drivers or employees that are required to drive for work? Should they have processes or systems or trainings in place to maybe assess how good of a driver they are, like they would in other safety areas of the workplace?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's about assessing drivers how good they are when they maybe first join a workforce, because that becomes quite selective. I think it's about providing, and it's the same in all facets of a workforce, is providing training tools to allow them to upskill. And in this case, driver training for me, particularly for companies that have large fleets and they often have cars on the road, is you constantly want to help improve. It's the same in us in motorsport. We don't just rock up to a rally and just expect the best and rely on your laurels. We're constantly practicing and testing and trying to become better, and it's the same in any sport. And for me, that's the same with fleets, is that if you have opportunities to put your drivers through driver training regimes once or twice a year, and it's also a way where a company can be seen to be looking after their staff. It's not just about upskilling them for safety and obviously for the cost of their fleet, but it also shows to your staff that you'll care, and it's that real personal side to it as well. So I think training courses are heavily underutilized all around the world, and I think we should be taking more part in that sort of stuff to not just rely on, because like you say that they've got a driver's license so they must be good, is actually provide the tools to actually help them become better.
Yeah, that's great advice. At the E-Road Fleet Day, I've got a quote here, if I remembered it correctly. A calm driver is a competent driver, I think was the message you were delivering. How can fleet managers maybe instill that mindset in a workforce where they're always under time pressures and deadlines and trying to get more done with less?
Well, there's two parts to that. A calm driver is a confident driver, and a confident driver for me is a comfortable driver as well as a safe driver. A lot of that comes back to seat time and what we've just touched on. If you're regularly driving and you're upskilling all the time, then you're comfortable in your surroundings, you're comfortable on the road, you're comfortable doing 100 or 110, whatever the speed limit might be, and dealing with adverse conditions. So when it's raining and dry, you're good. But as soon as someone becomes tense behind the wheel, all of a sudden, how you react behind the wheel becomes a lot more narrow-minded. All of a sudden your peripheral vision, I guess, narrows in. You're not aware of your surroundings. You're not reading the conditions because you're so tense and so worried about what's directly in front of you. And that comes back to experience and more time in those adverse conditions or whatever that surrounding is. So I think there's an element of, again, to come back to the training, but also time behind the seat, upskilling. But also when it comes to time management, when we're rushing, you make decisions faster, and in a calm situation you need to be buying yourself time to make decisions. So if you're not rushed, you're buying yourself time to make better decisions when you're on the road, and that comes back to time management, which is tough because at the end of the day all companies have got to run to a bottom dollar. You want things to run efficiently and as quickly as you can, but the downside to that is, if it goes wrong or if things start spiraling out of control in terms of, constantly getting behind, and that snowballs into, getting further behind on a schedule, I think that potentially costs the company more money, for example, than if your schedule was a little bit more lenient and you can actually stick to your time and your promises of customers or visits or whatever it might be, but also making sure that the driver is not rushed and is not making those stupid decisions. So a lot of that comes back to planning. And the reality is, when you look at all the roads, particularly here in New Zealand anyway, the roads are getting busier. There's more traffic, there's more people driving. When it rains, we know that the traffic gets a lot slower. So it's about trying to allow for that and planning, which is of course not easy, but it is a factor that has to be taken more into account.
Yeah, that tunnel vision you mentioned, you see it all the time. Well, I see it not just at speed, but in environments where people are unfamiliar. You see them, they slow down. Where am I going to go? I don't know where I'm going, and that creates risk as well because the drivers around them don't know what's going on. So, yeah, as you said, if they're not comfortable, they're not making good decisions. That's interesting.
No, I think the biggest thing in that scenario is, I'm a big advocate that if you're not comfortable, don't push it. It's the same in our sport. If I'm not feeling comfortable in the car, I'm not going to take the risk because the risk is not worth it. But the key thing there is being aware of your surroundings enough to know, hey, look, I've got drivers behind me, I may be holding it up, is actually pulling over and letting traffic pass. We don't see enough of that in New Zealand, and you'll see queues of traffic, and the frustration that builds up behind is often what causes silly mistakes and silly decisions. So I'm all for people driving at their own speed and their own comfort level. We shouldn't be pushing people to go, hey, look, the speed limit's 100, you need to go 100, because if they're not used to those conditions, then you're pushing someone beyond their capabilities, and that's when accidents can happen. But it's also just about people being aware to go, hey, look, okay, I'm going to go at 70. That's what I'm comfortable in this wet, rainy conditions. But hey, I've got a car behind me. I'm going to find a safe place to pull over and let them pass. And, that's a way to make it all work. But again, easier said than done as well.
Yeah. Well, just taking that line of thought a little bit. So you're in a rally team, you're trying to win a world championship, you're trying to win a race. There's a lot of pressure, obviously, to perform and succeed. But you've got to assess risk. You've got to know when to take risk and when not to take risk. I think you called it dumb risk and measured risk when you were talking at the E-Road Day. So a culture within the team. How do you make everyone in the team feel comfortable to take the right risk and not just sort of try and go for the win at all costs? How do you work with that culture within a team?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is communication. In a sports environment, it's about everyone being on the same page of what your strengths and weaknesses are. From my side, what's my strengths and weaknesses as a driver? For example, what's our equipment strengths and weaknesses? So that's our car. What's our engineers, our technicians' strengths and weaknesses? What's our weather forecast strengths and weaknesses? And always trying to focus on our strengths, because that's where you're comfortable. You're going to be able to push more or make more of an impact, if you like. Where our weaknesses are is often where you have a little bit less risk involved, shall we say. Taking risk in what you know is your weak areas is almost destined to end in failure. So, for example, in rallying, I'll put my hand up to say, hey, look, wet tarmac rallies, which are very, very slippery, I don't like. I've never been very good on them. I've never been very fast. And I don't go into those rallies now. When I was younger, you used to go in with this mindset, I have to be fast everywhere. As I've got older and hopefully a bit of wisdom, you've sort of learned to go, hey, look, this is not my cup of tea. I'm going to take a chill pill. I'm not going to lose everything in this one stage or this one day. I'm just going to drive to my comfort level. And then when the conditions come to me, then I'm going to push and try and make up that time. Because I know if I push in these conditions that I'm not comfortable in, I'm going to end up off the road. So for me, it's about accepting your strengths and weaknesses, playing to those strengths and weaknesses, but also communicating with your whole team. What am I good at? What am I not good at? Where are we going to perform? Where we're not going to perform? And I guess managing the risk in that matter.
Yeah. Sounds like a good tip for people managing teams and understanding that not everyone's going to be a world rally champion. That some people, at different levels and different stages, and you just need to accept where they're at and the differences.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Maybe if we can just, getting towards the end here, just talk a little bit about your driver training program. So you're working with young drivers. You mentioned the motorsport, you can start from 12. So what are the sort of programs you're working on? And are you training the fleet drivers of the future to be safe on the road?
So just launched this year. This is our first time doing it. So I've been helping a little bit on a bit of advocacy around road safety over the last 12 months. And, I'm a big believer in action over words. So, we can talk about things all we want, but until we actually start getting people behind the wheel and giving them some tools to help, then I think that's what's going to make the biggest difference. Sure, it's going to be a small pool of people to begin with, but hey, look, we have to start somewhere. So we're launching this event over the summer. It's going to be in 4 regions this year, and basically, at the moment, our focus is really on the youth drivers, because I feel like we're not going to be able to tap into all the drivers around the world. You're biting off more than you can chew. But if we can start with the young drivers and it can become generational, so try and educate the young guys, and then when they're with their parents or other parties, they can help pass on some of that information. And of course, as they get older and mature, there'll be people behind them. So trying to focus on the generation and provide a platform through these motorsport events. So basically, we've gone into the 4 regions that have the highest youth death toll in New Zealand at the moment. So here, that's Waikato, Manawatu, Canterbury, and Southland. And we're putting together a free motorsport event. So we're going into the schools, people aged between 12 and 18, going, hey, look, we've got this free motorsport event. Come along, bring a road car. You don't need a race car. You just need a normal road car. Or we're going to have some road cars there that you can use yourself. All the safety equipment, everything's supplied, making it really, really easy. And basically for them to come along and one, have some fun. You want to have an enjoyable environment for people to get them to come out. You don't want it to be a chore or an assignment. You want them to come out because they want to come out. And then introduce them to driving techniques and standards. So we set up the courses to be driver challenges. So it's not about speed, it's about car control. It's about how you handle a slide. It's about how you have close proximity to cones and obstacles without hitting them. So using driver skills, and then that's where I'll work with the 50 students. So we have 50 per day on each of these events, and we're sort of launching it in a way that it's not a Hayden Paddon initiative or a Paddon our team initiative. It's a general motorsport initiative. So we're still actually just trying to confirm what the name is, but the whole idea is that any motorsport driver or personality or anything could get behind this sort of program going forward, and to help, I guess, magnify it so more drivers get involved, more events run. Like you say, maybe then you open it up to the corporates and fleet events, because to be honest, as a company fleet day event, it'd be, one, you're upskilling. Two, it can be fun and engaging. It can be a great team building exercise. You know, you bring your fleet of 30, 40, 50 drivers out and you do a little motorsport event while teaching them practical driving skills. And you have a barbecue at the end of it, and you really have a good get together. So it ticks a lot of boxes, but obviously, you know, it does require manpower as well. So we're working through it, but I'm a big believer this is where we need to go. And while it's a small step, hopefully it's an important step.
Yeah, no, it sounds exciting, and obviously, as I said, you're targeting the regions where the road safety is an issue with youth. So yeah, I can't wait to hear more about it as it launches and rolls out. Maybe just finally one, a bit of, if you've got some advice, if you could sit down with fleet managers in Australia and New Zealand, and you could give them one bit of advice on how to improve the road safety culture, or the safe driving culture within their organisation, what would it be?
Geez, it's hard to have one. I mean, like, I'm not going to pretend to sit here and be an expert in terms of fleet management, or, at the end of the day, I'm just a rally driver with a small business. I mean, I wouldn't undervalue or underestimate how much value training can provide. We often, as I say, it's the same even in our small business. We often look at the bottom dollar. We look at what's going to make the company as efficient as possible, and we skim over things like driver training, because, again, like you touched on, if they've got a driver's license, they must be fine. I couldn't recommend more training. Practical training is what's going to fix our roads ultimately. Long term, it's going to take many years, but practical hands-on training is what's going to make the road safer. And yeah, just trying to build a culture where everyone's listened to and welcomed, and I think by providing training, you are listening to staff, and you are taking care of their well-being. So I think it's a no-brainer in that sense.
Yeah, no, excellent. I think that's great advice. I think, certainly in my experience with fleets, that the assumption that you've got a license, you know how to drive, is what is used too often, I guess, and they don't then take in the other factors you're talking before about, trip planning, understanding conditions and all the different things you experience on the road, if you're doing it as a job every single day. So training sounds like a great tip. All right, well, that's it. Hayden Paddon, thank you for joining us and sharing practical and powerful insights from building high-performance teams to shaping safer roads. I think, even though you are just, as you said, a humble small business owner and rally driver, I think you've provided a lot of great tips and insights for our audience of fleet managers. And so for our listeners, if you've taken away one thing from today's episode, let it be that safety isn't just about slowing down. It's about training. It's about giving people permission to drive to their level of competence, and encouraging them to make smart decisions, and backing them to know what they're capable of and what they're comfortable with on the road as a driver. So Hayden, thank you very much.
No, thanks for having us.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, whether you're listening to it on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Share it with your team. Look out for our magazine, All Things Fleet, that you can find in Qantas Club lounges and industry events, and keep reading all the articles on our websites. And continue to drive safe and have safe conversations, or conversations about safety with your teams. So until then, stay safe, and thanks for listening.